Right, you joined me on a media day, like a little media day for just a handful of social media types like myself, for Zero motorcycles. So we're just out near Market Harborough taking out the SRF, and then I'm hoping to jump on the SRS, which is slightly more touring or distance or commuting focus, whereas this is like a sports naked electric, equivalent to the Livewire, you could say. And I've borrowed this one in the past from English Electric Motor Company, and they also dropped an SRS with me at one point as well. So I got to live with that one for a bit, but those two things were about a year apart, and I've never been able to jump on the SRF like today and then straight onto the SRS and really give a direct comparison. So I'm going to ride this one for a bit. We're going to go and get a coffee, and then I'll swap onto the SRS in the latter half of this vid. And of course there'll be a sort of more formal review on my main channel that I'm going to shoot after the riding. Now, you do have to have your wits about you a little when you jump on an electric, especially after I've been riding regular internal combustion bikes all week, because you know, once you switch it on and hit the ignition, although there's no sound to let you know that it's ready to go, obviously if you twist the throttle, let's say you were just playing around with the controls, it will set off. And the other thing is there's not a great deal of engine braking, so if you do set off and come up to that first corner, you can't just close the throttle and expect to slow down. It does of course depend on what riding mode you're in, because I'm in sport right now, so there's barely any engine braking. But if you're in eco, where it's trying to regenerate the battery when you're slowing down, that does add some resistance, and it does add to the engine braking as well. And then the other thing of course is that they feel so quiet and easy and effortless that you can really easily get up to non-legal speeds without realizing it. In fact, it's quite nice to have a lead rider to follow who's setting the pace, especially when you're vlogging away. So although like 110 horsepower-ish doesn't sound particularly alarming, it's 190 newton meters of peak torque. And like I always say with the electrics, it's delivered from right down low. So whenever you want, you just twist and go. Now, the riding position on these Zeros always feels a little unusual to me. The seat's quite low. Most electric bikes have low seats, but the bars are quite far forward and the pegs are fairly high. So although the pegs and bars feel sports nakedy, the seat is more like my Trident or something like that. I think it's 810mm on this bike. So it does make for a distinctive riding position. Now, I'm not sure if that's because electric bikes tend to be a little heavier, although this one is the best of the bunch. I think it's around 220 kilos, which is reasonably competitive with like a petrol, middleweight naked bike. But the Harley and the Energica certainly is up at like 260, 270. So I'm not sure if the low seat is to help you cope with that, or if it's because Zeros and the Harleys, they're both American, so a big part of their market is probably cruiser riders who might potentially consider an electric, and so they're used to lower seat heights. I mean, you only have to look at the Pan America, Harley's new adventure bike, which has that adaptive ride height feature where it lowers when it comes to a standstill. Clearly they think that the adventure bike stance is on the tall side to get some of their existing customers to make the leap. Excuse the pun. So maybe that's it with these bikes. I'm not quite sure. I would like to be a little bit higher and further forward for like the twisties, but I've got to say it does make for a easy, manageable bike in traffic and around town. And I reckon a lot of these bikes are ideal for commuting, where you know the exact distance you're traveling, so you don't have to worry about charging points. You just plug it in at home every night. So it could be geared towards that as well. But yeah, quick rundown of the other specs. You've got Showa fully adjustable suspension, both on the fork and shock. J1 brakes, radial monoblocks. I think they're 320mm discs. Very good they are as well. Now, I think J1 are a Spanish company who actually make brakes for a lot of other brands, and then they just stick their own logo on the stuff. But yeah, they're plenty good enough on this bike. Like I say, power's up over 100 horsepower, peak torque at 190, and it's a 14.4 kilowatt hour battery. And realistically, it's got similar range to the Livewire, so under 100 miles on the motorway at a constant speed. But when you're in town with that regen, you'll get 150 or something like that. And there are a few options on this bike for add-ons that can go in the tank space here. So either a faster charger, or you can add a bit more battery capacity for extra range. So that's a nice option to have, although you can opt to have neither. And like I say, if you know you've got a manageable distance in terms of your commute, and you don't need either of those things, maybe you just charge at home overnight, so you don't need to charge faster, you can just leave this empty as a storage box, a bit like a Honda NC or something like that. Wish I could tell you where we were, but I have absolutely no idea. Uppingham. We're in Uppingham. I guess this is my first time here. Very nice it is as well. A little fruit and veg market and a hat stall. This is quaint. I think we're going to stop for a coffee here, so I might pause the vlog and I'll get back to you when we jump on the SRS. Alright, so now for a quick spin on the SRS. You've got a fairing on this bike and a bigger pillion seat. A few other tweaks to the riding position. Heated grips, thankfully, as well. So it would be a better choice than the SRF for like distance riding. But I'm not really sure how many of them they sell to people who are intent on touring. I think it's still, you know, it can be done, but it's still fairly impractical. Or you'll just have to be happier with covering less distance. I realistically think a lot of these will be doing commutes and year-round riding, perhaps some slightly longer weekend rides as well. And certainly it's a good choice for 2-up. It will take 3-piece luggage as well, so you do have that option. But yeah, like any electric motorcycle, I feel like at the moment it would be best used for commuting where you know the distance you're doing. But perhaps if you have a stretch of motorway or like multi-lane A road, this would be pretty good with that extra wind protection. It's kind of like a half fairing really. Your head is still fully in the wind, but it's a bit fresh today, and it is taking some of that wind chill off the body, which is definitely a nice thing. You'll note the unusual mirror position down here. It's actually really good for visibility. They're nice and wide, and yeah, you get a good view. They also fold in as well, look, for filtering. But one thing I would say is if you do need to adjust them, it is quite a long reach compared to mirrors that are mounted on the bars there. But probably for most riders, once you get them set where you want them, there's not much need for tweaking. You got a TFT dash here. It does connect to your phone, so you can change all your modes and customize them from the app, the Zero app. You can also see your state of charge if you want to check it when the bike's in the garage and check whether you need to go and charge it up before you ride tomorrow. You know, it's a nice handling bike. It feels very smooth and stable. It does have that slightly unusual riding position I just talked about with the SRF. Same on this SRS, slightly lower in the seat than I'd expect. But maybe because the bars are higher and a little closer to you on this bike, it makes more sense for that long day in the saddle kind of comfort. But yeah, it does feel great through the turns. I guess it's partly the lack of gear shifting and engine noise and vibrations that gives it that really flowing feel. And then of course, when you're driving out of corners, it's absolutely rapid on the gas. Well, not on the gas, but you know what I mean. So of course, a big thank you to Potski Media and Zero for putting today on. Like I say, there'll be a video comparing the two on the main channel, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Hope everyone's well. It's coming up to the weekend. Hopefully you'll be all out riding and enjoying yourself, so let me know how you're doing in the comments below. And I'll see you next week.